Hello, and welcome back. Today I want to show you some of the varied surfaces and cycling paths I get to ride on my way to work here in Berlin. I think my daily commute does a pretty good job of showcasing the different sorts of bike surface infrastructure present here in the city. Berlin has some pretty decent bike paths, but there are definitely some things we could do to improve safety and increase joy while riding. I live in Kreuzberg, pretty close to Admiralsbrücke, and my office is near the Zoologische Garten in Charlottenburg. My commute is 7 or 8 kilometers depending on the route, and it generally takes me 20 to 30 minutes. So, starting near the canal at Admiralsbrücke, I ride up a mixed-use gravel path. In the mornings, this is usually pretty empty, but if the weather's nice on a summer afternoon on my way home, I sometimes have to get off and walk my bike because it's so busy. Honestly, this is pretty nice, especially if someone is walking by selling cold beer out of a cooler. Jumping off the canal path, I find myself on a classic painted bike lane. Here I have to share the road with motor vehicles, and there's no physical barrier, even really significant space separating me from those 2-ton death machines. What's nice about these sorts of lanes is that they're on the road itself, which means that the actual physical riding surface is pretty nice. Berlin doesn't have the greatest roads, but they're a whole lot better than some of the surfaces I find myself riding. More on that later. Turning onto Hallisches Ufer, we get the closest thing Berlin has to a bike highway. For the first kilometer, between Prinzenstraße and Hallisches Tor, we get a very wide bike lane, with a substantial striped separation area between cars and bikes. After Hallisches Tor, the situation gets even better. The bike lanes get even wider with physical barriers, albeit small ones, separating it from car lanes. The surface is nice asphalt with minimal bumpiness. This section lasts all the way to the George C. Marshall Bridge just south of Potsdamer Platz. I totally had to look up the name of that bridge, by the way. The weather is pretty nice today, and I'm in a bit of a whimsical mood, so instead of continuing along Hallisches Ufer, I turn northwest towards Potsdamer Platz with the intention of cutting through Tiergarten. Turning off Hallisches Ufer, I jump up to take Stresemannstraße. Here we see the worst of Berlin's cycling paths, the dreaded brick bike path. These paths don't look that bad. The bricks are flat, so the path doesn't rattle your skeleton like a true cobblestone street. The annoyance of these paths is more subtle. Instead of being bumpy, these paths are full of longer wavelength undulations. These undulations are about half a meter to a meter in wavelength, and they form because the bricks don't form a continuous surface like asphalt does. What this means as a cyclist is that you can never ride comfortably. You're always being bounced around, but your eyes can't justify the discomfort. At least when you're riding on cobbles, you can see that the path is super bumpy, so it makes sense that the vitreous humor in your eye is being shaken like an ill-advised martini. With the Berlin's brick paths, your eyes don't see anything wrong with the path. It looks relatively smooth, creating a disconnect between what you see and what you feel. Mix this with poorly poured asphalt patches, sections of missing bricks, and tree roots pushing up through the path, and you have a seriously annoying cycling surface. One thing that's interesting about this section along Stresemannstraße is the number of cyclists who choose to ride in the street as opposed to the brick bike path. On the morning I recorded this footage, I spent a few minutes making note of how many cyclists opted for the road instead of the official bike path. After observing for about 5 or 10 minutes, I saw that roughly a third of cyclists chose the road. Obviously, I can't speak for them, but I imagine that their decision to take to the street might have something to do with the fact that those brick cycling paths are so gnarly to ride. Taking the street along Stresemannstraße isn't without its own perils. Look how narrow it is and how many cars are passing. After I go through Potsdamer Platz, I reach Tiergarten, where I can relax. For the next 2 or 3 kilometers, I don't have to deal with any cars. The path is gravel and it's pretty smooth. It's also wide enough that I don't have to worry about tree roots messing up the path. From a purely experiential perspective, this is the best the city has to offer. While I never really reach a point where I can't hear car traffic, it does feel pretty magical to be able to ride under a canopy of trees while cutting through lawns and manicured gardens. This is also the only point on the ride where I feel even remotely comfortable recording while riding my bike. After Tiergarten, I have a few city streets left to navigate before reaching my office. I didn't get any footage of this because I was running late for a meeting, but I did manage to snap a photo of some silly changes someone made to a sign outside my office building. All in all, I think my commute shows off what Berlin has to offer in terms of cycling path infrastructure. I get to ride on nice gravel paths through the park, frustrating narrow brick paths that run alongside the sidewalk, and a mix of on-street striped bike lanes. In a future video, I'd like to talk about the changes I'd like to see in Berlin's cycling infrastructure, from more bike parking to the creation of bike highways that crisscross the city. Anyways, that's all I've got for you today, so see you next time.